So today we're in Knutsford at the ancient nonconformist chapel built in 1689, and here in the graveyard there are a number of interesting graves, including that of Elizabeth Gaskell, the famous novelist, and also that of Clara Boult, or Clara Gordon, the wife of the Rev Alexander Gordon, who is buried himself in Dunmurry. So we'll have a look at that important connection. But first of all, let's have a look at the Unitarian chapel here in Knutsford in Cheshire, built in the year 1689, following the Toleration Act. And for dissenters at the time, toleration was something new. They had no idea whether toleration would last. And so they built their meeting house in a style that resembled an ordinary dwelling house. And you can see some of the features both inside and outside, in the windows, for instance, that remind us of an ordinary home. So this church is about 90 years older than Dunmurry, but the internal layout is basically the same, with the pulpit in the middle of the long wall and the people gathered around in pews with the galleries above them. There's no doubt that Knutsford's most famous daughter was Elizabeth Gaskell, and she was closely associated with this chapel throughout her life. She was a member as a young person and later married her husband, the Rev William Gaskell, in the chapel. He was minister of Cross Street Chapel in Manchester. But Knutsford was always in her mind, and indeed her novel Cranford really is set in Knutsford. But because of her eminence as a novelist, many people make special visits to the chapel to visit her grave, because both she and her husband are buried in the chapel yard, and also to find out more about her life and the inspirations that led to her being such an important writer. And the chapel has an exhibition in the church hall. Now, Elizabeth Gaskell died in 1865, and she's buried here along with her husband, the Reverend William Gaskell. But on the opposite corner of the graveyard, there's another grave, which is the one we're particularly interested in today. It lies flat on the floor, and this is it. This is the grave of Clara Maria Gordon, born Clara Maria Boult, and she became the wife of the Rev Alexander Gordon, minister in Belfast and principal of the Unitarian Home Missionary College. Now, Clara was a member of the eminent Cheshire Unitarian family, the Boults, and as such she was related to the famous conductor Sir Adrian Boult, and helpfully there is a poster about Sir Adrian Boult on the staircase in the hall going up to the Elizabeth Gaskell exhibition. But really her story was a very tragic one. She was born in 1846 and died in 1902 at the age of 55 after a long period in hospital. Because she was in hospital in Cheadle near Manchester when her husband was principal of the Unitarian College, Clara was buried in Knutsford. And today the inscription is very difficult to read, but I'm very grateful to Tim Regan, who's given me a transcript of what it says on the grave. And what's inscribed there tells a lot about the very sad life that they must have lived. It says, in memory of Clara Maria Gordon, the daughter of Swinton Boult and the wife of Alexander Gordon, M.A., born at Birkenhead, 21st of August 1846, died at Cheadle, 23rd of February 1902, and here buried. In remembrance also of Richie Gordon, their second son, born 26th of September at Norwich, died the 10th of January 1902 at Mafeking, and there buried. And of their only daughter Mary Gordon, born at Belfast 30th of November 1879, died at Rostrevor 25th of May 1904, buried at Warren Point. And of their fourth son, Geoffrey Gordon, M.A. Honours, Lieutenant 12th Royal Lancers, born at Belfast 15th of October 1881, fell at Potches near Ypres 30th of April 1915, and there buried. And of their eldest son, Christopher Gordon, born at Norwich 30th of August 1873, died at Belfast 17th of August 1927, buried at Dunmurry. Also the Rev Alexander Gordon, born 9th of June 1841, died 22nd of February 1931, buried at Dunmurry. Alexander Gordon and Clara were married in Liverpool in 1872, and here's a picture of Clara Gordon taken in Liverpool, I think just about at the time of their marriage. They moved from Liverpool to Norwich to Belfast, with Alexander working as an increasingly high-profile minister. And in 1889 they left Belfast for Manchester when Alexander became the principal of the Unitarian Home Missionary College. But he was a really significant individual within church circles, and he became an historian with an international profile, as well as being the principal of the college and a lecturer in the first free faculty of theology in the British Isles. But I have another more detailed study of Gordon, and at the end of this video there'll be a link to that if you want to find out more about him. But this was their story, this was their family story, the story of his wife's burial in Knutsford and his burial ultimately in Dunmurry, along with some other members of his family. So from the time when Alexander Gordon left Belfast in 1889 until his death in 1931, some 42 years later, he was a member of Dunmurry Church. And not just a member on paper, an active and totally engaged member of the church who missed communion only on one occasion in those 42 years. And that was during the First World War, when a change in the railway timetable meant he was stranded in Dublin. But Gordon conducted his last service here in Dunmurry at the age of 90 on the 18th of January 1931. And someone was on hand to take a photograph of him as he went into the church that day.